So I believe we should kick off. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Pharma webinar about turning risk into organizational value. So the idea for today is to talk about the ERM white paper, which was disclosed by Pharma and our ERM committee recently. But before starting, just a bit of housekeeping. So we have more than 440 participants registered to this webinar, and I can see already 170, 180, 81, 82. So it's moving up, having joined. So we will try to have, of course, a short Q&A by the end if we have time, but of course it will not be feasible to have, I would say, voice questions. So please use the chat to read your questions, to write your questions. Sorry, we will try to select a few ones, once again, if we have time, and try to give you some answer by the end. If not, we can make a follow-up afterwards. But of course, it will not be, once again, logistically feasible to do that live. So before starting, let me first introduce our panel for today. So maybe we can go to the next slide. Yep, thank you. So today with us, we have the chance to have, so first, Ulrich Adam Heid, who is the chair of the Pharma's ERM committee and is head of group risk management and electronics in Sweden. We have Volkan Can, head of risk and internal control at Çimsa, part of the Sabancı holding in Turkey. Lisa Moller-Fricke, who is enterprise risks and business continuity principal at Therma Group in Denmark. And last but not least, Herman Sutter, head of group enterprise risk management at Barry Callebaut in Switzerland, all member of our ERM committee. So all have been deeply involved in the production of this ERM white paper published, as I said, recently. So maybe moving to the next one. And before leaving the floor to our panelists, just for those of you who are not aware or don't know so well Pharma, just a few words very quickly about what Pharma is and what is our core mission. So as the name states, Pharma is the Federation of European Risk Management Association. So basically, we bring together 24 risk management associations in 23 European countries, and we represent more or less slightly more than 6,500 risk managers active in all kinds of industry, from public companies to financial companies, commercial, industrial. As we used to say, we promote and advocate for a profession, for a business process, not for an industry. And risk management, as we all know, is across all kinds of businesses. So basically, in terms of core mission, we like to say that we try to champion the risk and insurance management profession in Europe and, if possible, beyond the European borders. Our really value is to leverage, all our association capabilities to really deliver impact in several main areas, which are advocacy, education, networking, and of course, shared expertise. So clearly, that's part of our DNA to try to disseminate, best practices, insight, and approaches, processes, tools, whatever you can imagine, which we hope will help the risk management community to progress, to be better, to improve their way of working on a daily basis, and also to cooperate all together to be more efficient for our organization when it comes to risk management. 2 words maybe quickly about the ERM committee. So that committee is composed of 13 experts from 12 countries. So you have 4 of them today with you, but there are, of course, others. Actually, and making a long story short, they do or they replicate the Pharma DNA and mission, but focusing on ERM. So the idea is, once again, to really provide our community with knowledge, insight, resources to support the risk management profession. And really, they try to address a very broad range of topics, from cultures, methodologies, processes, content, governance. So everything around ERM is really part of what they do in their not really daily, but in their work as a committee. So the ERM white paper we are going to talk about today is a perfect example of that, of our firma's mission. So it's really about setting a European vision for trying to transform the corporate risk management from, let's say, a compliance-focused activity, or more of a, sometimes being labeled as being about reporting or documentation, into really a strategic driver for decision-making and operational excellence within organization. And I believe, if you think about the current environment, if we think about the changing risk landscape, the fact that risks are more and more interconnected. When we talk about cyber risk can be business interruption risk. In the past, we were looking at geopolitical risk as mainly a credit risk or a nationalization risk. Now we see that it's also a supply chain disruption risk. And all these changes and interconnection are also much more faster in the past. Think about the path of changes we have seen over the last months. It seems that every 2 weeks there is something new coming, changing the landscape and requiring organization to find the relevant solution. So back to what I was saying, that white paper is really the foundation on which we believe ERM should be organized, structured, be implemented to become really actionable and really helping organization to deliver tangible value for their business processes. So enough for the introduction. So I would like to leave the floor to Ulrich, starting with a first question. And Ulrich, I would like to ask you maybe just to tell us about how the paper is structured. What was the rationale behind the key driver you choose to highlight, and why basically the theme which are developed in the paper has been identified as critical for explaining why organizations need to further strengthen and empower the ERM process in their daily operations.
Thank you very much, Laurent. Many questions. I start with some reflections, and then also the discussions. I think we will be able to go more into some of the details. So first of all, welcome everyone. I am really happy that not just so many signed up, but also participates here. Obviously, there's a need discussing these topics. This is really good to see. The importance of strengthening risk management is, I think, widely recognized for different reasons. You mentioned some of them, but before I go into the content of the paper, I would like just to remind us what really the starting point is. I mean, every organization defines corporate and business strategies that guide the opportunities it pursues. Starts with getting the opportunities done. And in doing so, then, of course, the organizations accept certain risk. So, and here's now for our community, the question on how to approach that, how to deal with the situation. So this white paper offers practical guidance to help corporate risk managers translate risk management or enterprise risk management concepts into effective practice. We know there's a lot out already. There are risk management books, there are academic articles, risk management standards. But when interacting with colleagues, corporate risk managers, we all realized that these kinds of practical guidance, how we now did here with the white paper, was missed in the community. So that was the starting point. The white paper outlines recommendations to mobilize boards, executives, regulators, if in your business a player, risk professionals, so that risk management receives the focus, resources, and collaboration needed to become, we call it a shared engine of resilience and value creation for any organization. And I would like to repeat, boards, executives, and so on. So we need to get the topic of risk management more discussed. We get all these stakeholders mobilized, and the white paper should help all of us. So what is the focus on? We focus in the paper on corporate risk management. So what constitutes corporate risk management? You would read in chapter 1, responsibilities of leadership, because we believe leadership is really decisive for risk management. Governance and relations with other lines. Earlier we have said lines of defense. We don't use this term anymore. As well as capabilities needed for a corporate risk manager leader. You will also find a mission statement for corporate risk management and corporate risk management leaders. And at the end, we formulated 10 golden rules of corporate risk management. Maybe you have seen them already, and maybe you have your favorites there. So let me be clear. There is not one right way to steer risk management. Every organization needs to find its own way. So there's not the farmer way which we expect you to follow. But hopefully this paper can support any organization on that journey, no matter whether you're at the beginning of the journey or you are already somewhere and you would like to improve. This white paper builds, as Laurent already said, on the work of the FERMA ERM committee and the insights gathered through a consultation. And these consultations included the member associations and external stakeholders, and you find a list of the different stakeholders in the paper. So that's in a nutshell, still very high level, the content of this paper. And if you would ask me what I would like to highlight, then the first answer would be that doesn't matter. It's everyone needs to find out what is important for me. So I can always recommend reading about sound governance needed for any corporation for many reasons, but also for risk management. And I recommend really to read the mission statement, as there are responsibilities described, which in a kind of list there, which is really having a good background list to take with you in your daily discussions in your company. I would like to leave it like that for now. So that's it all about. Back to you.
Oh, thank you, Like, and yeah, maybe going, or deep diving a bit into how it looks like on the daily basis. I would like to switch to Volkan, and Volkan, ask you, the building on what Ulrich just described as the paper's objective and the underlying rationale, and looking at your own experience working with organization on ERM. What is, to your opinion, what are the key elements that are needed to make an ERM framework, truly effective and impactful in practice? So I understand from Ulrich's explanation there is no one single way or one single truth that could be applied everywhere. But from your experience, how do you see that? What is really needed for a risk management process and framework to be efficient within an organization?
Thanks, Lauren, and thanks for the opportunity. I think I want to start from the end. I want to emphasize that first of all, the harsh talks, I think, needs to take place before the decisions, not after. This is a very critical motivation, first of all. And starting with that, I would like to also make a couple of words from the Ulrich's point. I am 20 years in this sector, and I am 5 years in the Turkish Risk Management Association, and we are hearing the same things from our members also. And I'm also, as a risk leader in my company, I'm experiencing the same thing. Somehow I agree the idea that all companies has their own flexibility to apply their own way of risk management or framework or whatever you call. But at the end of the day, this doesn't mean that we can sacrifice the core values or the principles of the risk management. What I'm trying to say is that at this point, the white paper organically puts a very good starting point because it is created by 13 risk professionals from 12 different geographies in two years. At the end of the day, really, this committee, as I observe, worked hard to come up on a consensus because as I said, every risk professional has their own way of handling their risk profession. But this white paper really, sincerely, I can say, but reflects the core intersection values of the point. Coming to your question regarding to, let's say, I had the opportunity really witness the ERM framework creation at the companies, but what I observe that effective risk management really starts with the good governance at the start and the communication later. Go on with communication. In my experience, the way you initially position the governance model and define the expectation is critical because once the organizations adapt their structure, it becomes very difficult to change later. What I'm trying to say is that I really like to use metaphors because at the end of the risk management is somehow technical, but companies are also like the living organisms. Procedures, frameworks, heat maps, risk registers, and statistical models are important. We still need them. But at the end of the day, is not about the tools themselves. We have to influence the company behavior regarding the decision making. This is very important. The company decision reflex need to be influenced by the ERM model we put forward. So the thing is that ERM, in my personal view, ERM shouldn't limit itself to discussing only the risk as a discipline. It must engage with the business itself, strategy, operation, investment, transformation, people, technology, and growth. As maybe as risk managers, we fall in this a lot, but we love to talk about the risk terminologies, the models, the Monte Carlos. But at the end of the day, we really need to talk about the business itself. We need to talk about more about the EBITDA, let's say profits, growth, these kind. What is the related situation in that room? So it doesn't should be reflected only the risk. So let me cut to the chase because the communication part, if we have time in the next phase, I would like to touch also the communication part. But the governance as a starting point is very important because whenever at the beginning you put the right governance, it will go along with this. It will be very hard to change this.
Yeah, thank you, Volkan. I like your explanation about, I noted, Monte Carlo versus business, and that's something indeed sometimes we forget when we talk to top management. Is that the first thing you need to do is to talk their language. The top management doesn't talk about Monte Carlo exposures. They talk about growth. They talk about EBITDA. They talk about market share. They talk about productivity. So if you want to be part of their decision-making process in a more efficient way, I like the focus on communication, and as you said, it all starts with the right governance and communication process. I would like to turn to Lise, following that kind of logical path in our discussion. So we talked about the overall objective of the white paper. Volkan told us a bit about the success factor of an effective ERM framework. But once again, we have the chance to have very experienced people in this panel. I mean, from your perspective and professional experience, how can that be translated into practice if we think about connecting more efficiently ERM with I would say the realities of the day-to-day business operation, strategic decision. I always ask myself, so I'm pleased to ask you, what does it really mean to embed ERM into decision making across the organization? And how can it be really done to connect with the operational team and the operational part of the business for decision to be more efficiently supported by risk management as a process?
Yeah, and thank you. And I agree with what Volkan said, that the first point is really to have the governance in place, and as part of that is as well to have the structure in place where the decisions are made, so that we as risk managers don't come in too late in the process, so that we are being asked to do risk assessments when the decision already has been taken. So from my point of view, the first really critical thing to do is really to look at your business, look at the processes that you already have in place, and ensure that risk processes are embedded into the already existing structure, meetings that is going on in your business. Because the risk managers is not the one that really have to have the value of this, it's the business. So we have to make sure that risk is on the agenda, on the business that we support. And we do that by having risk in the normal meetings, reporting that goes on in our day-to-day operations in the companies that we have. So as you said as well, Laurent, it's about talking the language of our business. It's to translate risk into the revenue, the cost, because that's important for the business that we support. They want to understand what with the risk we have, how is that affecting their business? What's the cost? And as well, what opportunities do they get out of the decision? So it's really being part of the processes. And that's why as well we made this paper is as well about giving it as well to the leadership team, so that they can say, well, here are some benefits, because to make them aware, what can they get out of risk management? I think that was, and then I think the last thing here is as well is to say, well, we as risk managers, we are not aiming at not taking risk. We are aiming at taking the calculated risks, and that's how we can support the business in making these risks visible for the decision makers, and then it's up to them to make the right decisions for their point of view with the information we can provide.
Thank you, Lise. Interesting. Maybe last but not least, once again, Herman, Lise just told us, I like that vision of, we are asked to do the risk assessments once the decision is already made. It's a bit like for a lawyer to review the M&A contracts once it's already signed. And so from once again, building on everything we have heard and based on your experience, we talked about how can you be upfront in the chain, in the decision chain, or the chain of command, let's say, to not have these problems of doing the risk assessment once the decision is made. But more generically, as a question is, why is that? What do you see as the main constraints or the main barrier that prevent the top management for really embedding risk management much earlier in the chain? And we always say, what is preventing risk managers to gain a seat at the executive table? And I know some risk managers are at that table, but not all. So how can it be more systematic? What are the challenges for this not to happen more systematically, and what can we do to overcome these challenges?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Laurent. Right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's really our job. And I think just also building up on what Volkan, Ulrich, and Lise has said, right? We often heard now the word decision. And I think the key objective and just a simple proof that you added value or that you added organizational value is whatever you do should change a decision. Right? That's kind of the starting point, a very simple test. If you don't change a decision, whatever you do, it's probably not the right way. And of course, to get a bit on the seat on the table, at least in my experience, it is a journey, right? So it's not something that's happening overnight. And on that journey, you will also have once in a while a failure. And I think we need to encourage ourselves that you cannot always be right, and you need then to stand up again and try maybe another way. What I really can build up is what has been said before is the business language, right? And I think on page 8 on the white paper, we clearly say avoid technical language. And I think it's really something we all need to embrace. And I think we also make it now official that risk management needs to start with the business language. We like our technical jargon. By the way, also the insurance industry or related industry like the technical jargon, but the business language first. That's really important. Then also on that, on building up on the governance, right? Because that's also an important level to get the seat at the table. I think our rule two as one of the golden rule really talks about this famous integration, right? And I also really encourage that we don't need to rebuild a risk governance or whatever. We really should embrace, and as also Lise has said, right, to integrate it into the existing decision-making forums. That's where the risk manager needs to be. Then also rule number 8, the cross-functional element, Laurent, right? To become a strategic advisor, risk management is a team sport, right? And you really need to collaborate and build up a network with your other functions. And sometimes I recommend maybe even you step a bit back and you try to convince your colleagues to actually present the decision and push it, and you rather advise or coach in the background. To have a seat at the table as a risk manager doesn't mean that you take the decision or make the call, right? You also coach a bit in the background. And yes, it's correct. We need technical expertise. Without technical expertise, it doesn't really work. But also what Volkan said, I mean, the communication is really important, and particularly the communication for the senior management. My practical experience, it's always a bit like an iceberg, right? You only have very limited time. You need to do a lot of work, a lot of technical work that goes in the underlying things, like you have referred to, Laurent, the assessments. But at the end of the day, you have a short time to pitch and to senior management. And for this, you indeed need 2 things. And one is, I can just confirm what also Volkan has said. You need a qualitative narrative where particularly metaphors often help. And next to it, of course, it's nice if you also have a quantitative narrative, but that narrative or that numbers you should not make too complicated. You really need to translate that effectively in the business language, where indeed effects on EBIT or volumes or whatever. I think it's a combination. So a good qualitative narrative together with some solid data help to achieve that objective, Laurent, that you were alluding to. And last but not least, again, I think it's really also what Volkan has said. The methods matter, but not so much, right? The decision is really the North Star. And we as risk managers should really start with that, and also not to be obsessed with our technical methods.
Thank you. Thank you, Herman. Okay, no, that's interesting. And I see a bit also of a red line across everything you've said, from Ulrich, Volkan, the governance, the communication, the practical insight, the fact to be in the process earlier, and you get back to this with the business language, the translation. I believe it's all logical. Talking about translation, I wanted to go back to you, Ulrich. maybe quickly. In the document we talk about a risk universe, and is it something you could maybe shortly explain or detail to the audience about what is exactly the meaning of that concept and how you see that into basically everything we've heard today from our panelists. Can you just maybe give us some light about this concept and how to embed this in the daily operation?
Yes, and this is an interesting topic you choose, because I know there are discussions. Do one need a risk universe or not? I mean, we have formulated also in a software way, I would say. In my personal, and this is now my personal view here, I mean, risk universe, I know that could be a big thing, and you spend lots of time to develop something big. For me personally, it is just, you have, of course, in the ideal world, you have some risk which may hinder you if they realize getting your opportunities pursued. So therefore, and that would come with probably a negative financial impact or a loss of sales or whatever. So the root cause is important, because otherwise you can't discuss it and mitigate it. So therefore, I think it makes sense to cluster it in a way and say, there are risks, you can call them procurement risk or cyber risk or whatever. And at the same time, and it may help also filtering out, in case you have a risk register, then you get all the risk which you can maybe take as a package and give to the responsible in the company. So for that purpose, I think it makes sense to structure the wide variety of risk, which otherwise would be a long list. At the same time, you should not use it in a way that you suddenly end up in a silo thinking, because not just geopolitical risk and supply chain or whatever you have mentioned at the beginning is interconnected. Also, the more operational business risk are very much interconnected. So therefore, that the idea of the risk universe should help you clustering, structuring. At the same time, it should not hinder you in being remaining flexible and agile in dealing with the risk. I feel it sounds a little bit abstract here, but this is the thinking behind it, to help you navigating through the huge load of information you get while doing risk management.
Thank you, Ulrich. And before going maybe to some questions, I would like to ask maybe to you all, but separately, of course, a last question. So we talked about also the concept about this paper is it's a white paper. So I also understand this is the first step, foundational, I would say, step in what we want to move forward. We also expect, of course, to have feedback from our fellow risk managers, from our national association, to feed and build up that process and strengthen, the risk management process, the risk management leadership into the organization. So you have all been involved in that paper, primary, initial, very important step. And I would like to ask all of you, if you look at this, starting from now, and you look at this in, I don't know, in the 2, 3, 5 years time horizon, what would be your vision of success, or where should we be, or what kind of outcome would you like to see to be able to say, we have been successful in advancing what we were trying to advance? I don't know who wants to start, but
I can.
please do.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest dilemmas of today's, highly complex business environment is that a regular risk professional really, I feel this in my, daily life also, needs to have really 3 personalities, because the risk management communication is different at the board level. Risk management communication is different at the outside to the shareholders, and different in the CEO domain, because at the board level, it is only 4 days a year, okay? But the rest of the year, you can apply the same profile to the SEO domain. The scale is different. What I like this with the white paper, in this white paper, there is a layered approach. So you can find out the rationales of this each layer, so that you don't mix each of them. Okay, so this layered approach for me is very, very crucial. And finally, what I can say is that at the end of the day, in my profession, I see myself as a trust builder. At the end of the day, I need to build trust at the board level, at the CEO domain. I need to build trust so that they can be more brave to take the decisions. At the end of the day, also for the sustainability purposes, for the sustainable growth, for the shareholder level. So in our geography, we use this terminology, but we use ERM, just replacing the R with the V, EVM, enterprise value management, we call it. So this language also is very simple. When you talk about the value creation, you can talk the same language with the HR personnel or procurement department, sales department, and also the CEOs, executive CEOs also understands this very well. If we are after the value creation, and everybody, the human psychology is that we don't want to hear the bad things. So if we go after with the value creation and with the proper risk and opportunity management, this will change the game, I think.
Thank you. Well, anything else you would like to add, guys?
Well, I think from my point of view, I think if we as a committee think we have been a success, you said, how do you see this in 5 years? If we have more top executives looking at enterprise risk management and seeing this as a value and not a compliance task, and then that we have more risk managers being comfortable in talking in front of the board, I think then we have been a success.
Yeah, nice. I indeed support that. For me, Laurent, in the center of the paper is really the corporate risk manager. The person. I'm less into the systems and then the frameworks, but I think really the people, the risk profession, and I really hope this paper helps also to mobilize a bit the extended stakeholders. I'm also thinking about the insurance industry or other players, that there is a really shared holistic understanding, particularly also about these challenges about the interdependent risks and the trade-offs we need to make. And at the end of the day, again, we need to have a business language to really help the organizations, right? Because the key purpose of the paper is to ultimately build organizational value through the corporate risk manager.
Thank you, Herman. Thank you. I just see that we just have a very, few minutes left. We have a couple of questions popping up in the box, and I would like maybe to try to pass at least one or two. One that I find interesting and can be a bit challenging is from Ruben. He's asking, and that's a bit linked to what we were just saying. He's saying, I'm trying to set up monthly 101s with each senior manager. So I suspect he's talking about the senior manager in the business. The senior management is challenging as they want to know how their time is valued and what value output it will bring. So I assume in their meeting. So what would you answer? Which I would translate it of, if you want to go and really be in a cooperation partnership. Volkan was talking about a trust builder with the people managing the business. Is I think what would be your answer? How do you convince them that they should sit with you and really go through that process, because their time is about production, business, operation, and they see you coming, like asking questions, discussing. Well, and Ruben, don't kill me. I believe I have summarized your question as best as I can. So maybe, I don't know, who wants to say a word for this? Volkan, you raised your hand.
For me, the short answer will be the risk management is the cross-functional. So it is one of the few, departments that bring, intelligence from because each company has its own way to become a silos. The departments of the companies mostly came from the, industrial revolution. We discussed this with you before, Lauren. So the risk management nowadays is very important because every risk is linked. So for this question, it is very crucial to connect the dots between the departments, supply chain risk can relate to HR or vice versa. But in short, this is a cross-functional department, so it will break the lines between the departments, and it will create value.
Thank you. So we have 1 minute left. So we have a few other questions, but Ulrich, maybe I would leave the floor to you for a final conclusion. We have 1 minute before the clock is done.
Yes.
So please, the floor is yours.
First conclusion or recommendation after this discussion, just read the paper one more time. I think we have experienced this in the ERM committee, although we worked with this for a long time. Having had a discussion with some colleagues or listening to the webinar and then reading it suddenly with different eyes and again. So I think this helps a lot for reflection. We have said it already. I mean, we invite for a discussion. We would we hope we can get something more concrete at hand for someone who needs to do the next steps. And we have reflected upon where we would like to see us in the next 5 years. And maybe some of the questions are then easier to answer. The values, that's one we could do an own webinar on the value of that. So this is something now we are quite proud of, which should foster this common community discussion for the right way forward.
Thank you very much. So I believe we are coming to an end. So first, of course, thank you very much to our four panelists. Thank you for your time, your commitment, and your work, on this paper, because it's not only about the 45 minutes we spent together today. It's also a long process to come with this, and as we said, it's not over. Okay, it's other things are coming. The work is in progress, maybe forever. That is the meaning of a business process. Thank you for all the attendees. I hope you found this interesting. You got some insight from it, some ideas. As Ulrich mentioned, please read the paper. There can be follow-up later. In terms of housekeeping, again, if I understood correctly, this webinar is recorded and should be available on YouTube. So you can look for the Firma YouTube account. It should be soon available on YouTube for rewatch, or suggest your friend to watch it. So having said that, thanks again. I wish you all an excellent end of the afternoon, and hope to see you soon, and at the latest, all in Rotterdam, beginning of October. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.